Clint Eastwood is more than a movie star, he's an American institution. For nearly 70 years, he has defined and redefined the image of the tough guy, the anti-hero, and the grizzled legend. From the spaghetti westerns of Sergio Leone to the mean streets of Dirty Harry, and from Oscar-winning epics like Unforgiven to heartfelt dramas like The Mule, his filmography is simply massive. He's a man who embodies his own artistic vision, a director and actor with a level of creative control that most people in Hollywood can only dream of. But what if I told you that inside that legendary body of work, there's a story, a persistent, 50-year-old rumor, about a film he made at a huge turning point in his career that he will not watch? A movie whose production was so filled with conflict, and whose final version was so far from what he wanted, that it felt like a total creative betrayal. This isn't just about an actor hating a final cut. This is the story of the exact moment a movie star knew he had to become a filmmaker. It's about on-set battles, clashing egos, and studio meddling that led Eastwood to draw a line in the sand. The year was 1970, a year he released two major films that would change the course of his career forever. Today, we're digging into the Hollywood lore to investigate the deeply personal story of the movie, or movies, Clint Eastwood was determined to leave behind. To really get the conflict of 1970, you have to understand who Clint Eastwood was in that exact moment. By the start of the new decade, he wasn't just Rowdy Yates from the TV show Rawhide anymore. He was a global star. The back-to-back-to-back releases of A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly had made him the face of a brand new kind of Western. The Man with No Name was anything but. He was a worldwide box office draw, an icon of quiet, tough guy cool. But in the Hollywood food chain, being a box office star and having real creative power are two very different things. In 1969 and 1970, Eastwood was still mostly an actor for hire. He had started his own production company, the Malpaso Company, in 1967, which gave him a bigger say and a larger slice of the profits. But he was still working in a system run by powerful studios and old-school directors. He was the star, sure, but he didn't have the final word on the script, the cast, or, most critically, the final cut of the film. This was a huge frustration for an artist who, by all accounts, had a sharp and growing idea of what a movie should be. He'd spent years on film sets, watching, learning, and building his own philosophy of filmmaking. He learned from the grand, operatic style of Sergio Leone and the efficient, no-nonsense storytelling of American directors like Don Siegel. Eastwood valued speed, decisiveness, and a clear vision. Qualities that were often missing on the sprawling, chaotic sets of big-budget Hollywood movies. The year 1970 became a trial by fire for Eastwood. He worked on two very different movies, both of which would push his patience to the limit and harden his resolve to take control of his own work. The first was a quirky Western set in Mexico, reuniting him with a director he trusted but pairing him with a co-star whose style was the exact opposite of his. The second was a massive, big-budget war film that would become a classic, but its journey to the screen would leave him feeling completely betrayed by the studio system. These two films, Two Mules for Sister Sarah and Kelly's Heroes, are at the heart of the mystery. For decades, rumors have swirled around them, but the real story of Eastwood's frustration is more complex, and more revealing, than the legend lets on. It's a story of two productions that pushed him to his breaking point and made him become the director we know today. The legend of the film Eastwood refuses to watch often points straight at Two Mules for Sister Sarah. On paper, it looked like a great project. It brought him back together with director Don Siegel, who was fast becoming his most trusted collaborator. Their first movie, Coogan's Bluff, was a hit, and they both shared a similar no-frills, get-it-done approach to filmmaking. The script was an unusual Western with a comedic twist. A cynical American mercenary helps a nun named Sister Sarah travel across the dangerous Mexican landscape, only to find out she's secretly a prostitute working with revolutionaries. The movie was shot on location in the sweltering heat of Mexico, which was tough on everyone. But the biggest challenge for Eastwood wasn't the heat, it was his co-star, the incredible Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine was, and is, a Hollywood force. She was an Oscar-winning actress and a Broadway veteran with a huge presence, and she came from a completely different school of acting than Eastwood. McClane was known for being theatrical, expressive, and deeply analytical. She wanted to rehearse, talk about motivation, and explore the psychology of every scene. Eastwood, on the other hand, was the king of minimalist, gut instinct acting. His power was in his stillness, in what he didn't say. He believed in capturing a real, spontaneous moment, usually in the first or second take. This deep clash in acting styles reportedly created a lot of tension on set. According to production reports, the two stars were on completely different planets. Director Don Siegel, who was firmly on Eastwood's side, found McClane to be a difficult presence. In later interviews, Siegel was brutally honest, stating, "It's hard to feel any great warmth to her. She's too unfeminine and has too much balls. She's very, very hard." That sentiment really captures the personality clash that simmered through the whole shoot. Eastwood himself has always been famously quiet about on-set drama, letting the work speak for itself. But Shirley MacLaine, in her own memoirs and Q&A sessions, has given us a peek into their dynamic. While she has called Eastwood quite brilliant and funny, she also acknowledged his quiet, reserved nature. One famous story she told was about Eastwood getting so fed up with a difficult horse that he got off and punched it. A moment she hilariously noted was when she knew he was a true Republican. While the story might be exaggerated, it shows the massive gap between her chatty, analytical style and his quiet, action-first personality. Beyond personalities, there were creative choices that likely bothered Eastwood. Casting McClane was a studio decision. The part of Sister Sarah was originally written for a Mexican actress, and Elizabeth Taylor was also considered. Casting McClane, a pale-skinned American, changed the story's original dynamic. McClane herself was reportedly horrified when she saw the daily footage and realized how over-the-top her fake eyelashes looked, but by then it was too late to fix it without messing up continuity. For Eastwood, the film's tone might have been another issue. Two Mules for Sister Sarah often tilted into a quirky, light-hearted comedy that sometimes felt awkward in a Western setting. The central twist, while clever, could be seen as a gimmick. Eastwood was busy building a very specific image, the tough, morally gray anti-hero, and this movie, with its banter and odd couple pairing, was a bit of an outlier. It's also telling that this was the last time Eastwood would ever take second billing on a film poster. From then on, his name was at the top, a clear sign of his rising power and refusal to play second fiddle. While Eastwood has never publicly trashed Two Mules for Sister Sarah or confirmed he won't watch it, the stories of on-set friction and creative compromises have kept the legend alive for 50 years. It represents a time in his career when he was still subject to other people's decisions, from casting to the creative tone. The experience stands as a strong candidate for a film he'd rather forget. So, we have our first suspect, a film marked by clashing personalities and creative differences. But the story of 1970 doesn't stop there. The second film Eastwood made that year involved a much bigger fight, a battle not with an actor, but with the entire studio machine. Before we get into the case against Kelly's heroes, if you're enjoying this dive into Hollywood history, take a second to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're always digging up the hidden stories behind your favorite movies, and you won't want to miss what's next. If the issues on Two Mules for Sister Sarah were about personal clashes, the problems with Kelly's heroes were about artistic betrayal. This was a production on a whole other level. A massive World War II epic filmed in Yugoslavia, Kelly's Heroes was a huge project for MGM, with a large cast including Telly Savalas, Don Rickles, and a scene-stealing Donald Sutherland as the hippie-ish tank commander. Oddball, the movie tells the story of a group of American soldiers who go AWOL to rob a bank full of Nazi gold behind enemy lines. On the surface, it's a fun action comedy. But that's not the film Clint Eastwood agreed to make. The original script, titled The Warriors, was written by Troy Kennedy Martin. Eastwood was incredibly impressed by it, calling it one of the best anti-war stories I've ever seen. He said its message was subtle and never preachy, a story that was packed with action but also full of heart and humanity. It was meant to be a darker, more cynical satire, using the heist to explore the greed and absurdity of war. The tone was supposed to be like other cynical war films of the time like MASH and Catch-22. The production itself was long and difficult. Eastwood's go-to director, Don Siegel, was still busy finishing Two Mules for Sister Sarah. The job went to Brian G. Hutton, who had directed Eastwood in Where Eagles Dare. The shoot was chaotic, but the real disaster, in Eastwood's opinion, happened in the editing room. After filming wrapped, MGM was under new management. The new head of production, James T. Aubrey, was known as the Smiling Cobra for his ruthless cost-cutting and his love of safe, commercial movies. According to reports, when Aubrey saw the director's cut, he hated it. He thought the film was too long, too dark, and that its anti-war message wasn't what the studio wanted to sell. He demanded the film be recut into a simple, Clint Eastwood action-adventure. Against the wishes of both the director and Eastwood, MGM chopped about 20 minutes from the film. But it wasn't just the length that changed, it was the whole soul of the movie. The scenes they removed were the very ones that had drawn Eastwood to the project. These were the quiet, character moments that explored the soldiers' feelings and their exhaustion with the war. In candid interviews years later, Eastwood spelled out his deep disappointment. He described a key deleted scene between his character, Kelly, and Telly Savalas's character, Big Joe. "It's the whole deal about why and the philosophies of war," Eastwood said. "It wasn't an explanatory thing, it just gave you a feeling of the guys in a different mood other than running around shooting and telling a lot of jokes." Another deleted scene apparently gave more insight into Kelly's backstory, adding a layer of tragedy to his cynical hunt for gold. By cutting these moments, MGM dehumanized the film, as Eastwood put it. What was meant to be a smart, anti-war dark comedy was turned into a loud, cartoonish adventure where the heroes mow down enemies with little consequence. Even the title was changed by the studio from the more serious The Warriors to the goofy Kelly's Heroes, a title Eastwood called dumb, guessing the studio was trying to cash in on the sitcom Hogan's Heroes. Eastwood was furious. He saw the final version as a complete betrayal of the script he had loved. "I'm not putting it down," he said of the final movie, "I just think it could have been a very, very good movie with a little something added special." That something special was the film's heart and its anti-war message, all of which ended up on the cutting room floor. Unlike the whispers around Two Mules for Sister Sarah, Eastwood's frustration with Kelly's Heroes is well documented and has been stated publicly by the man himself. It was a clear case of a studio completely changing a film's artistic intent. The experience was so powerful that it cemented his decision: the only way to protect his vision was to have total control. The only way to do that was to get behind the camera himself. So, which one is it? Which 1970 film is the one Clint Eastwood supposedly refuses to watch? The Hollywood rumor mill, which loves a good story about feuding stars, has long pointed to Two Mules for Sister Sarah. The story of a clash between two huge, but completely different, personalities like Eastwood and Shirley MacLaine is definitely juicy. The behind-the-scenes tension and arguments with the director make for a great tale. It represents a personal frustration, a reminder of a time when he had to work in ways that went against his quiet, focused style. However, the evidence for his deepest and most lasting creative disappointment points straight at Kelly's Heroes. While the conflict on Two Mules was about personalities, the conflict on Kelly's Heroes was about principles. Eastwood has publicly and repeatedly said how angry he was that MGM's editing gutted the film of its meaning. He didn't just dislike the final cut, he felt it was a desecration of a powerful anti-war story. For an artist as serious as Eastwood, that kind of creative vandalism is a much bigger sin than a difficult co-star. Ultimately, the idea that Eastwood still refuses to watch either film is probably just Hollywood myth-making, an exaggeration of a deeper truth. There's no definitive quote from him confirming he won't watch them. Instead, the refusal is likely a metaphor for his profound disappointment. These films, especially Kelly's Heroes, represent a painful lesson learned at a critical moment. They are symbols of his powerlessness in the old studio system, a system he was determined to beat. What happened after 1970 is the most telling part of the story. The frustration of that year didn't make him back down. It lit a fire under him. He had seen firsthand how a great script could be destroyed and how a production could be ruined. He knew that to make the films he truly wanted to make, he couldn't just be the star. He had to be the boss, and so, the very next year, in 1971, Clint Eastwood stepped behind the camera for the first time to direct Play Misty for Me. It was a bold choice. A tense psychological thriller, a world away from the westerns he was famous for. He brought the film in on time and under budget, showing the calm, efficient control he had always admired in directors like Don Siegel. The film was a critical and commercial hit, praised for its tight direction and suspense. It was the start of one of the most respected and prolific directing careers in American film. The experiences on Two Mules for Sister Sarah and Kelly's Heroes weren't just bumps in the road. They were the catalysts that turned him from an actor into an auteur. They taught him that real artistic integrity requires artistic control. Every movie he has directed since, every decision made under his Malpaso Company banner, can be seen as a direct answer to the frustrations of 1970. He built a system for himself where he would never again have to watch the soul of his movie get robbed on the studio's cutting room floor. So, the legend of the movie Clint Eastwood refuses to watch is more complicated than it seems. It's not just about one film, but about one pivotal year. 1970 was the year a global movie star, fed up with clashing egos and studio meddling, made a decision that would define his career. While the on-set drama of Two Mules for Sister Sarah is a great story, it was the studio's gutting of Kelly's Heroes that was the final straw. That experience hardened his resolve to never again be just an actor for hire. It launched a directing career that has given us some of cinema's greatest works. In the end, the story isn't really about the film he won't watch, it's about the reasons he started making his own.